If you're like me and had awesome parents who showed you absolutely testosterone fueled productions like The Predator, 300, Dragon Ball Z, Rocky, then you've been dreaming of having gigantic meat cannons from before you could even spell gigantic meat cannons. And luckily for you, I am here to make that dream possible. I'm going to be addressing some of the common arm training mistakes and 4 lessons that I learned that helped me build 18 plus inch arms, along with a progression scheme that will pump your shit up like a bike tire. But before we can get into that, please subscribe. This channel's new and it's starting off. I think I'm giving pretty damn good information here. So if you just hit that button, it'd help me out a lot. But let's get into it with lesson 1. The first thing you should be doing is making them a priority. I know this sounds pretty obvious, but how many people just throw arm work at the end of their workout, half-ass it, or skip arms? It's such a common thing to hear people say, oh yeah, I had to skip arms today. What are you doing skipping arms? And if they're not skipping them entirely, they're probably not doing enough volume to inspire growth. These are the same people who will do 5 sets of bench, 3 sets of incline dumbbell, and then 3 sets of cable flies because, bro, gotta get that chest volume in so I can have the double Ds. But then they're looking like spider limbs because their torso's developed and their arms are itty bitty skinny things because 20-pound bicep curls at the end of a pull day is not gonna grow anything. You need to make the switch and treat these like you do your compounds. As you prioritize your bench press, you prioritize your squat, start prioritizing that tricep push down. Doing that mental switch is huge. Luckily for me, when I started off, my dad told me and had me prioritize my arms just as much as everything else. There was no difference. It was that you're training a muscle, you're going to go hard, and you're going to give it the requisite volume that it needs. Differentiating between importance of muscles is something that you can do once you're jack stacked and yiggity yak. That's not a luxury for people who are still in need of growing everything. I got the majority of my arm growth doing my arms at the end of the workout, but I never changed my effort levels. On those push or pull days, I would always be going hard as fuck because the workout wasn't over once the back and the chest exercises were done. But recently, to boost my arms past 18 inches, I switched to upper lower and I started supersetting my arm exercises earlier with those back and chest exercises. Because they are a smaller muscle group but not for long, you can superset them pretty damn easily. This means I'm hitting biceps or triceps as like the 2nd or 3rd exercise instead of like the 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th. Doing this allows you to be stronger earlier because you haven't done all your pressing before you hit a tricep pushdown, and it stimulates that new growth. You're going to be tired, but the muscle itself can still do the work, and it's more fresher, more fresh, freshest. And along with this, you have to check your effort. You can't just cruise control your way to 50 cal pythons. Following this and checking your effort is progression schemes. You've got to progress them like you would any other compound. I hate seeing people just grab a weight because it feels right, do a couple curls, and then put it back down. No, run a progression scheme. Dynamic double progression is so simple and it will boost your gains so much. Or you could run my variation, which I'll be covering later in the video, until death dynamic double progression scheme. Yeah, that's going to be fun. But moving on to lesson 2, we have exercise variety. I love training arms. It is alien to me when I hear somebody say, arm training is boring, or, oh, I don't want to train arms. Well, why not? Oh, because they go and pick up the same dumbbells and do the same couple dumbbell curls and don't change anything up. Arms are so much more complicated than you first think. You have the short head and the long head of both the bicep and the tricep. You have the brachialis. You have the high lat insertion across the shoulder joint. There's so many little nuances to training them and getting that holistic development. Training with a lot of variety helps keep your elbows and your shoulders healthy, along with keeping it interesting, as I talked earlier. Arm training should be fun. There's so many different things that you can do. It also ensures complete muscle development, like I talked about. When you take these variables and mix and match them, you can create completely new exercises. You can go heavy or light. You can go hammer, regular, or super supinated. You can go stretch-based or free elbow curl. You can go overhead extension or press down. You can go, I missed one, I'm going to check my notes. You can go bilateral or unilateral. There is a lot of variation here, and you just craft your own exercises. For the longest time, I did easy bar curl skull crushers, but then I saw Bald Omni Man try them on a decline bench with dumbbells, and I was like, oh shit, why have I never thought about that? Because there's more to arm training than you know, and you can just only get there by experimenting. This does not mean exercise hop. You want to stick to the program, but it's always good when something's not working to try something new. Why not? Keep the game train going, and the most important thing is that you're enjoying your training and it's interesting. Yeah, there's going to be those exercises you don't want to do, but that's probably because they're hard. It should never be because it's boring. Usually in my programming, I start with a heavy bilateral movement to target both biceps or both triceps, and then I follow up with a lighter, more concentrated unilateral movement and start with my weaker arm to bring it up to the same size as my stronger arm. The third lesson that I have is intensity techniques. With everything else you're doing in your program, it's kind of hard to fit a lot of arm volume in there and still hit everything else to the level that you want to. And so I usually end up around 6 sets per a workout. And with this, you don't need much more. I've really found that if you're going hard, taking it to failure, the blood gets moving pretty quickly, and my arms are toast if after 6 good sets. But that's where intensity techniques come in for breaking plateaus and spiking daily volume. Along with being extremely fun and keeping training interesting. I love these things. I've been experimenting a lot with them over the past year, especially when it comes to arm training. And it's essentially just a fun game of how do I torture myself to get bigger? Because the biceps and the triceps are smaller muscle groups and they're used in more isolatory movements, it becomes harder to progress. You're not going to be adding 5 pounds to your bicep curl each week. But that's where intensity techniques work well, is it gives you another opportunity to progress on each of those sets. And that's where progression schemes come in. Regular dynamic double progression is great. You can make a ton of progress on it. And some of the additional factors that you can add, like range of motion and form, also make more gains. But sometimes you want to get a little crazy, and that's where my variation comes in. The goal here is to methodically mass blast your arms or other body parts that you want to use with this with the intensity techniques, adding more in-set volume reps kind of thing to break past that plateau. So what you do is you start just running regular dynamic double progression until you stall out. Okay, you hit a plateau, and then you try that plateau another week. That is the official week 1 of this little progression scheme. And I want to introduce my Until Death Dynamic Double Progression Variation. If you get the same or less reps, you've smacked that plateau again, then proceed, as week 2 is 2 straight sets, and then 1 intensity technique set as your third. And then week 3 is 1 regular set, and then 2 intensity techniques. And then week 4 is 3 intensity techniques, followed by weeks 5 and 6, which is 5 and 6, which is also 3 intensity techniques. I use, for example, on a preacher curl, drop sets. I don't get more than 3 to 6 more reps on this. You're dropping too much weight. Its goal is to really simulate and eke out a bit more of the set that you're stalling out on. This is essentially a volume blast to skyrocket you past the plateau. Yeah, you could just do a 4th set or something, but that's not nearly as fun or exciting or new stimulus. During these intensity technique sets, you're essentially just trying to beat your reps from last week. No different than a regular dynamic double progression, but you get 2 attempts. Let's say you get 8 full curls on your first set, and then you drop 5 pounds, and then you get 3 more. The next week, you get 8 again, but if you get 4 more on that drop set, that is progress right there, and that's what I'm talking about. And after those 3 full weeks of just complete intensity techniques, start back at week 0, retest that plateau, and then you're gonna smash it, because you just put your arms through hell weeks, and you definitely grew from it. I find drop sets to be the easiest to use for this progression, but you can also use lengthen partials, rest pause, and cheat reps to do this. It's all kind of dependent on the movement. For me, my preference is just to use lengthen partials on all tricep movements, so I'm gonna use something else to use this progression scheme. Usually a drop set or those cheat reps as I talked about. But anyways, these intensity techniques can be the secret to breaking your progress plateaus, but you have to keep in mind the good, hard, regular set work comes first. These are the icing on the cake. This is that extra mwah when you're eating that birthday cake. Why am I with these cake analogies? What am I doing? Anyways, intensity techniques. And then we have lesson 4, our final lesson, and that is frequency. For a long time, I hit my biceps and triceps twice a week with 6 sets per session, and this served me well, but I needed something more. So I've implemented an arm day in this past year, increasing my volume by over a third. And this has made a huge difference. With smaller muscle groups, adding more daily volume only works to a certain extent. At a point, you're just kind of done. Like, yeah, your quads or something could handle a brutalization of 9 to 12 sets, but your biceps and triceps are just gonna be like, what the fuck? We're not gonna be recovered for the next time we hit this. And so that's where that third day comes in. It really allowed me to round out my arm training completely, as I talked earlier about that holistic development. More variations to do and forcing me to finally work on bringing up my arm imbalance. And I did that through being able to do less volume on my upper body days. Instead of having to go from 6 to 9 sets nice on my upper body days for my arm work, I could leave them at 6 sets, make one of them unilateral, and dump the rest of the volume on this arm day with a bunch of different variations so they look absolutely sculpted like Michelangelo did them himself. That's a little bit arrogant, egotistic, and self-centered, but you know what? It's true. And when you have a day devoted to arm work, you don't have the fatigue of those heavier exercises. Yeah, I do an overhead press, but that's really not that fatiguing compared to having a bench, barbell row, a weighted pull-up, stretch focus press. You're like, oh my God, I have to do bicep curls. But when it's literally the first thing you do, you can rip it with more weight, more effort, and more tenacity. I call my arm day the rest day that's not a rest day. Also, because it is its own day where I also hit shoulders and back, but don't worry about that. I can allow for more volume because everything moves around the arms, not the other way around like other days. So I moved up to 9 sets of biceps on that day, implementing a hammer curl at the end. I have a pullover which also hits triceps. So if I do want more volume on a singular day, here's where I can test it out and see if it will work. So those are the 4 lessons that I've learned while building big arms. To recap, the first thing that we have is treat them with respect and make them a priority. And then we have exercise variation to not only keep it fun, but have a holistic development of your entire upper arm. And thirdly, nobody ever uses thirdly. We then have, this is me stalling because I'm trying to remember my third point. Okay, now I'm on the spot and I'm blanking. Oh my God. Oh, intensity techniques. We have the intensity techniques, which also maximize your fun and give you a new way to progress when you're doing your arm training that's not just slamming up against the same amount of rep walls. And finally, we have frequency. It's a smaller muscle group. You can hit it more often. That goes for your calves, you fucking slackers. Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it if you made it this far in the video. Please do subscribe. I like doing this. I like sharing my information with people. It's even better if they actually watch the video. Holy shit. And let me know your arm training tips and tricks down in the comment section below. Hit that like button and peace. See you guys.